Trustees Emmons.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Hazen.
Here.
Jacobson.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Roberts.
Here.
Wu.
Oh, is that this? Here.
And Marlin.
Here.
Yeah, except it says December.
Is there anyone who wishes to address the Cunningham Town Board? Okay.
There is one.
You can give your yellow slip to the clerk, and then please come to the podium.
I'm Susan Taylor, live at 606 West Michigan Avenue in Urbana, and have been here for 50 years in the community. One of the things I've been watching since the League of Women Voters had this, and some of you may recognize it and some of you may not, but this is a handy dandy. I'm not so good on electronics. Anyway, back in I think this is maybe the last copy was 2010, 2011, and now it's online. But one of the major concerns for the county, from my point of view, is housing. And that's why I'm here to speak just briefly. I would like to draw your attention to the fact that it has been in the News Gazette this year quite a lot. And thanks to the Urbana Free Library, of course I brought the wrong piece of paper, but back in December of 16, there was extensive coverage because it had been presented to the Urbana School Board to ask them to notice the lack of housing in the school district and to put some pressure on the city council to think about it. There are something like 100 children in the Urbana school district that are homeless. And I don't know whether you remember, but back in December, the News Gazette ran an article about this, and it had other articles and letters and things going on in late December of 2016. So far, the City Council has not, as far as I know, studied the situation or come up with any solutions. But this, I am at the Cunningham Township meeting, am I not? And that's, my understanding is that that is the funded body that I'm addressing that has not yet acted on it. But I believe that you're all aware that there is a new housing director who's temporary, I believe, and I've understood that she's on 2 payrolls here for something, but I don't quite know what. But anyway, I kind of thought Danielle might be here, and I hope that Danielle, who has shown interest in housing, would have some support by being appointed, or however it works, by Urbana, which has nothing. I looked in here, everybody's county on back in 2010, except the only county-wide administrator here who was not a Republican was our, you know who, state's attorney. Every other county administrator is Republican. And I don't feel that the Republicans are particularly concerned about the poverty in this county. And if Urbana isn't concerned, it's Urbana and Champaign and Rantoul are the 3 cities, quote unquote, in Champaign County. Rantoul said you guys have the population. You take care of these things that the school board is worrying about, and da-da-da-da. And nobody has done anything since last December, as far as I know. Now, I'm hoping you guys know, because I don't have my News Gazettes with me. And I'm not prepared to make a real case, except that, as I guess you can see, I'm pretty concerned. And I've been here long enough to remember when there wasn't a housing issue that we've got with school children and their parents and their homes and their no addresses and all of these things. And it seems to me that that is the person, Danielle is the person who I hope you will put on the board of the Housing Authority, because the Housing Authority now is doing, pardon me if I'm stepping on toes, but doing nothing that I'm aware of. Apparently they're doing a search, but it hasn't been advertised in Champaign. Not in the News Gazette. How can the city or the township, pardon me, not look to its own community for its own community problems? I mean, maybe I'm all wrong. If I'm all wrong, I really apologize. But it's my understanding that there was nothing in the News Gazette about the fact that Ed Bland had left rather hurriedly, much to my delight. He's gone. But we haven't had a decent housing director that was responsible to any body that I'm aware of. And I don't know that we're going to get one if we get one from Chicago or Los Angeles or somewhere, and not somebody who knows his community. I don't see how you can have a housing director that doesn't know the community.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Diane.
In response to the first point about the concerns that were raised last winter, we did follow up through our grants management department. Kelly Murkowski did send out a pretty extensive email to city council members, kind of detailing what is being done and addressing some of the concerns. And I can send you that email so you can get caught up that way. And I will be making an appointment to the Housing Authority Board this week, and I think you'll be happy with that appointment.
Good.
So.
Well, if I had a nominating privilege, I would nominate a new director.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to address the Cunningham Township Board? Okay. Moving on to minutes of the previous meeting, the November 6th, 2017 meeting. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
I'll second.
Moved by Aaron, seconded by Jared. Any corrections to the minutes? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion passes. Committee to verify bills, Town Fund and General Assistance Fund.
Yes, so I sent out the bills by division and also by budget line. The total for the town fund is $62,487.93. And from the general assistance fund, it was $46,262.83. The town fund is particularly large this time because we did our Q1 disbursements for our grants. Any questions?
Dennis?
I don't have a question. I think I'll just make a motion that we accept the town fund and the general assistance fund as presented.
Second.
Moved by Dennis, seconded by Eric. Is there further discussion?
Just a point of process. I don't have the town bills sign-off sheet. Charlie might have that. Okay, cool. So before the meeting is over, let's just circulate that so we can sign off on town bills. That's it.
Okay. Did we vote? No. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion passes. Reports of officers.
Okay, so so my proofreader was out today, sick, and so it looked like The assistance statistics were from November, but I've updated and given you paper copies. So essentially, each month I let you know where we're at with our participants. We're at 53 general assistance participants, up from 49 last month. You might recall we started May at 26. There's a breakdown of who's on workfare, disability, senior citizens. The average age of participants is 49 years old. Recent terminations, closures of cases, were all 3 success stories. 3 people got Social Security. It's not retirement, excuse me, it's just Social Security disability. Pending applications, we'd like to keep that number small so that we're processing folks quickly. We have 15, down from 19 last month. Our advocacy clients who did not receive GA but received some form of service from us is 61, up from 56. So we have a total active client list as of last Friday of 131. That's up from 124 and up from a total of 26 in May. We will hear from Hope Wheeler on the audit in a bit. I have the same notes I had last time about the levy as to why I'm proposing it stay where it is, which essentially is a cut, so to speak, as expenses go up. But I think it's appropriate to just stay strong with where we're at so that I can complete the strategic planning process. You might ask, let's see, actually I'll get to those when we get to the, we'll have a presentation about town emergency assistance. So I'll just jump to the last 2 announcements. We are still doing a winter coat drive. Mid-November, we had so many coats, hats, and mittens, I thought we would never see the end of it. I couldn't believe the outpouring from the community was immense. And I went away for Thanksgiving, and I came back, and there was about, about a quarter of what was there before was there when I came back. So we had hundreds of pieces that went out the front door. So I'm just announcing again to the public as well as the town board members, if you could share with your networks, please. The need is much higher than I expected, and so we're just asking for as many donations as possible. Thanks to you, Eric, and others who have donated items. We really appreciate it. We're looking for clean, gently used winter items such as coats, sweatshirts, sweaters, hats, not hates, gloves, scarves, boots, and throat blankets, adult or child size. We have both needs coming in the front door. You can drop them off between 9 and 12 or 1 and 4 at 205 West Green Street. That's the little brick building just across from the library. Anyone in need can come. If you ever see a child or an adult without gloves or hat, you please let them know. We're very close to the bus stop. It's easy to find us. And then the last piece is, and I've mentioned this before, I believe that good governance is that you do competitive quotes for all your vendors. And although we're not required to do that, we're going to, in the month of December, basically open up for bids for maintenance or quotes for maintenance, lawn care, cleaning, and pest control. We are going to be prioritizing Urbana-based businesses. Almost none of our vendors are currently Urbana-based. We're also prioritizing women and minority-owned businesses. So since we are funded by Urbana tax dollars, we want to give back to Urbana tax dollars. Our outreach is going to include former township clients who have these skills and have been building their own businesses and clientele. So hopefully we can also expand, since these are small jobs that can be done by sole proprietors. And I think that is it in terms of my reports. Any questions?
Questions? Eric? Or Aaron?
So thank you, Danielle, for the update, and I believe my mom really enjoyed coming over to drop some stuff off. We want to
Thank you.
encourage her to do more of that. There's someone who should be reaching out to you who was planning to do a holiday meal around Christmas time, and they also want to have a sort of coat drive and winter drive for homeless people. So if you haven't already been contacted by them, I will make sure I put you in contact with them.
Okay, super.
Any other questions? Comments? Okay. Any unfinished business? Nope, seeing none. New business. First is an audit presentation.
Yes, so we just went through our annual audit, and Hope, if you want to join us at the front desk. I sent out digital copies. I have 2 printed copies here, just in case somebody wants to look at the audit. Raise your hand and I will show it to you. It's good reading. I'll pass it that direction. You can, but essentially, we had a pretty easy time going through the audit in September. Things were in good shape in terms of paperwork, even though there was a lack of transition in May. I do have to say that my predecessor did a fantastic job of making sure everything was documented and filed, and so I appreciate that, and it made the audit process very swift and pretty painless. So I think Hope from Clifton Allen Larson has a presentation for us, and then if you have any questions, you can ask them after that. Yeah, so Jason, if you could just pull Hope's presentation up. I'm sure he's doing that now.
And can you speak into the microphone?
Yes.
Either one.
All right. Thank you for having me here tonight to present the results of the June 30, 2017 audit. And I put together a little PowerPoint presentation this time to summarize the reports that we issued. Thank you. I can figure out. There we go. All right, so we issued 3 different reports as a result of the audit. We're going to go over each of those in a summary format: the governance letter, the financial statements, and then a management letter. And then in addition to that, we prepared the annual financial report to the State of Illinois Comptroller's Office this year. So let me know, feel free to jump in if you have any questions. But first I wanted to go over the letter that's specifically to you, the governing board. This is required by auditing standards. And just to hit some of the highlights of this letter, this is, as Danielle was mentioning, a very clean report or a clean letter. We just want to share with you certain nuances of the audit. If there are any significant new accounting policies, I want to share those with you. There was a new accounting standard required to be implemented this year. That's GASB 77 on tax abatements. That is really just a new footnote, a new disclosure item. Didn't affect any numbers in the financial statements. But that just, the new standard just asks you to disclose if you have any direct tax abatement agreements with any entities, of which you don't, and then if there are any other tax abatements that other governments have that might affect your tax income. So we'll talk about that in a minute. There is a new footnote regarding that. The second item in this letter I wanted to mention is if there were any significant accounting estimates as part of your financial statements. Being on the modified cash basis, you don't really have the significant accounting estimates that others might have on the accrual basis. So nothing to report there. Corrected misstatements. This is just to let you know, as a governing board, if there were any audit adjustments. There was just one adjustment this year, and that related to some payroll tax liabilities that were on the books at the end of the year that needed adjusted out, of which I know Danielle and Mindy were aware of those. We didn't have any uncorrected misstatements, meaning if we found some smaller dollar items that you chose to pass on recording, we accumulate those and report them to the council, but we didn't have any past or uncorrected misstatements. And then the last 2 bullet items there, we didn't have any disagreements with management on accounting or reporting matters or other auditing procedures, and we didn't have difficulties encountered in performing the audit. As Danielle mentioned, going in with a whole new staff, I think we started a little bit later, but that was so they could be prepared, and they did a great job of being prepared for us, and we were still able to issue on time, and things went smoothly considering a lot of transition there. Now to touch on some highlights of the actual financial statement for fiscal year 17. Page 1 of the financial statement is the crux of our audit, and that states that you have an unmodified opinion, meaning no modifications to our opinion, that these financial statements are fairly presented on the modified cash basis of accounting. So it's a clean opinion. The statement of net position is on page 3, and just that once again is on a modified cash basis. It shows at the end of the fiscal year you have approximately $3.5 million in total assets, and then $3.5 million in your net position number. Your net position number is broken down into a restricted component that's restricted in your capital assets, and then $2 million restricted in general assistance fund, and then $1.3 million of unrestricted. Your statement of activities, these 2 statements combine both funds together. Your statement of activities on page 4 shows a net increase this fiscal year of $356,000. Pages 5 and 6 break down the activity by fund, and then that shows that the town fund, the net revenue over expense for the fiscal year was $165,000, and for the general assistance fund, that net revenue over expense for the year was $196,000. The next section of the financial statements is the footnotes. I'm starting with the summary of significant accounting policies. Just to highlight a few footnotes, note 2 is a footnote in regards to cash. That's on page 12. That does show that all of your funds, your cash accounts and bank accounts are either covered by FDIC insurance or are fully collateralized as is required by statutes. Note 3 defines or displays your capital assets in more detail. So you can see that's made up of building, vehicle, and software, net of accumulated depreciation. Then note 9, wanted to point out, that explains any commitments you have or contingencies. So there we disclose any lease agreements you have, and then also the property taxes and how those are kind of reserved for or designated for if you have to pay back property taxes and related to the Carl. Excuse me. Then note 10 is the new footnote in regards to tax abatements. That does explain that you don't have any direct tax abatement agreements with any entities. There are some related to other governments that can flow through and cause a reduction in your tax funds. Those amounts aren't known at this point in time, but aren't expected to be significant. And on the cash basis of an accounting, it isn't necessarily a significant disclosure anyway.
Can I ask a quick question on that?
Sure.
So we have an enterprise zone, and we do have an agreement with that. Does that not count?
Is that the city or the township that
The
has that
township is
agreement?
part of it. We have a separate agreement with the city and a separate one with the township.
Okay, that would be part of it, but if the township does have a specific agreement such as that.
And then with the TIFs, that wouldn't be specific, but is there a problem with the timing to get the numbers for TIFs, or?
Yeah, this kind of came up late in the game, and we didn't have, it was going to take quite a bit of time to gather that information, and from what we were gathering, it wasn't going to be a significant dollar amount in your fiscal year 17 based on the activity that was going on, was my understanding. So we just explained that there are agreements out there, but the number is not known, and I think Danielle was going to start researching that to see if we can get the numbers for fiscal year 18.
Okay.
Yeah, and I look for on paper agreements with the township, and I didn't find any. So if we are part and parcel of an enterprise zone agreement, I probably need to reach out to the city and get some of that paperwork and get it archived over at the township. But yes, in terms of the TIF, it just looked like there wasn't. So I essentially said, I don't know. Do you want me to spend time looking at this, or do we want to consider it an insignificant finding at this point and move forward? So for next year, essentially, we can get our ducks in a row to see like what the impact on the township is of the TIFs and the enterprise zone, and at that point, see what if it's significant or not.
I know at the end of the TIF, or at the end of the fiscal year, that we get the TIF reports, but it's like December, but the fiscal year ends in June, so we wouldn't even have the 2017 yet. But would you be able to report the previous year in this year's audit, just to have an example to go by? So you could just look at the TIF reports from 2016 and get the abated amounts off of that.
Okay. Yeah, we could do that and disclose what period it's for, or then give an estimate then of through the fiscal year end what that might be, if you wouldn't have exact information. Also, I don't know if are there any sales tax abatement agreements?
Not that I know of.
Okay. Because that's what I've seen in a few other municipalities.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a little more to go here. Then I put this graph together to show receipts compared to this fiscal year compared to last fiscal year. Obviously, the big receipt there, you can't hardly even see the other bars, is your property taxes. That does show a decrease in your property taxes from 2016 to 2017 as shown there on the screen. And then your other revenues, replacement taxes, interest, and Social Security reimbursements and miscellaneous stayed fairly steady from year to year. And then here, in the disbursements for the fiscal year, once again on the cash basis of accounting, show these by very summarized categories. Your supervisor's office there, each of the categories does show a decrease in expenses from the prior fiscal year. The supervisor's office is the first 2 bars there, down from the prior fiscal year. The second set is the assessor's office. Then the third set of bars is your grants, a decrease there from 170 to 125,000. And then the last set shows your social services expenses in the general assistance fund. The third letter I just wanted to go over briefly is what we call the management letter. And this is where we just report any recommendations and findings that we wanted to share with you as the governing board. Here we are reporting, this is somewhat of a boilerplate finding, that we prepared the financial statements, and so that's something that auditing standards says we're required to report. If we prepare the financial statements, we can't be considered part of your internal control system, so we have to report that to you here. They were reviewed by Danielle, and we went over, she had questions on them, and we went over those, but something, like I said, we're required to report. In the perfect world, we come in, the financial statements are handed to us, and that's what we audit. But we do find in a lot of cases with our clients with smaller and medium-sized municipalities and governments that the auditor is hired to prepare the financial statements. We didn't have any other written findings or recommendations. We went over several things verbally with Danielle and her group there of suggestions just to help improve documentation and controls. But overall, like I mentioned, the audit went well, and you have a clean report here. Any questions? Okay.
Thank you, Hope.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Eric?
So, not so much on your report, but just to make it, I guess, clear to the public, the revenues over expenditures, this is a strategy of building reserves in case healthcare goes south. So I just want anybody in the public who's looking in or here to understand that that's not at all frivolous.
Yeah, and just a point on that too, this is fiscal year 2017 ended in July or June, the end of June. So I was in place for a month and a half, and we had our typical GA amount is, if you look historically, fluctuates between 100 and 200. We were at 26. So I think one of the issues just looking at that is trying to understand where's the kind of natural place where we sit, given that we're not growing as a community population-wise, what should we expect? And so our budget this year is much more in line with what we expect going forward. So I think as we see the office as functional with programs that are accessible, we'll basically get a good sense of what the draw is on the programs. And then, of course, the Affordable Care Act and its future is just a huge looming question as well for the township.
Thank you. Yes, Mary Alice.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the report.
I'll second that motion.
Motion by Mary Alice, seconded by Dennis. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion, that report is accepted. Next up is ordinance 2017-12-003, an ordinance levying taxes for all town purposes for the town of Cunningham for the tax year 2017, collectible in 2018.
So I presented on this when we since I first proposed it. I haven't heard anything from town board members about it since then. Essentially, the reasons stayed the same. What I said just now, let's see where GA caseload levels out. I believe that it will be somewhere in that 100 to 200 framework, and it will depend a lot on the economy. Second, and right now the economy is actually split. It's doing really well for some people and not for others. So the folks that we're we support. I wouldn't say this is good economic times for them. It would be if we could see a raise in the minimum wage. Please and thank you. So the second is we don't know the status of the Affordable Care Act going forward and its impact on Medicaid. 100% of our participants use either Medicaid or veterans, the veterans health insurance. And so we have no request for medical support. Instead, we have a significant request for housing support, and we'll get to that in that agenda item. And so in some ways, I think we should be seeing a shift from medical support to housing support based on what the need is. We kept the GA grant level the same at $265 a month. That is not kept up with inflation. We need to assess an increase. And then we're launching new programs. I'm working on a strategic plan that'll allow us to kind of take a long-term look and look historically at the numbers. And then I think if we reduce the tax levy prematurely and we find we need to raise it again, we may be limited by tax caps. So for all those reasons, I'm saying let's just, don't break it at this point. Just leave it as it is. And then let's take a look at it next year once we have some better data.
Is there a motion?
I move it, that we move ordinance number T 2017-12-003, an ordinance levying taxes for all town purposes for the town of Cunningham, Champaign County, Illinois for the tax year 2017, collectible in 2018.
A second.
Moved by Aaron, seconded by Bill. Further discussion? Is this roll call? Yeah. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustees Ammons?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Hazen?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Roberts?
Yes.
And Wu.
Yes.
That motion passes. Item C is,
It's cut.
cut from this agenda. Will it appear on a future agenda?
It may appear as a budget amendment.
Okay.
So I'm just working on what's the proper process for that.
A little bit of mix-up in communication on that one. So we move on to item D, resolution number T 2017-12-008R, which is a resolution authorizing the Cunningham Township Supervisor to sign a contract with NJS Enterprises for case management software.
This one is simple. It's simply that you authorize the purchase of 2, and we need more. It's becoming essential. So we have 4 staff and 2 interns, and we're requesting that we have 4 seats at a time. So this, I was able to negotiate a discount of $1,500 off the price to $4,500 for the 2 additional licenses. This will put us over budget on this line item. We have plenty in other line items, and we can do a line item transfer in the future on this.
Is there a motion?
Point of order, I guess. I don't know how important this is, but I think you said 8R, and it's 9R on my sheet. I don't know how relevant that is.
It should actually be 9R.
Looking at the amended agenda.
Yeah, there was a mistake. I'm sorry, I should have pointed that out as well. There was a duplication from last month.
009R?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for pointing that out. Is there a motion?
I'll move resolution number T-2017-12-009R, resolution authorizing the Cunningham Township Supervisor to sign a contract with NJS Enterprises for case management software for 2 additional licenses for approval.
I'll second.
Moved by Jared, seconded by Dennis. Further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion passes. The last item is presentation on the emergency assistance program.
So I'll get to the punchline first, which is essentially because you know your neighborhoods and your constituents, I am opening up for input from the town board on the criteria for emergency assistance. You can also email me your input if you want to spend some time with the document I gave you and provide input. Essentially, I'm using the month of December to finalize the details of the program. The plan is to launch it right after Martin Luther King Day, so the 17th of January would be the launch. So essentially, the role of the township supervisor is, our office is similar to a community insurance program. I oftentimes get the question, what is township? So essentially, everyone puts in through their taxes, and if someone falls into hardship, if there's no other resource, they can access township funds as a resource of last resort. And since we're small and independent, accountable to the electorate, we're able to be nimble and respond quickly to crisis situations. So we sometimes are able to cut same-day checks to keep people from sleeping on the street that night. And I don't think there's any other office in this community that can say the same thing. So Cunningham Township, we have typically run 3 programs: general assistance, medical assistance, and social service grants. But as I was mentioning before, the Affordable Care Act has really been a game changer, as well as, I'll say, our local dental program, Smile Healthy, and some of the work of Francis Nelson, the free clinics, and Champaign County Healthcare Consumers. So we actually have a really fantastic ecosystem around healthcare compared to when I was on city council 8 years ago, where medical bills often exceeded general assistance bills at the township. So we really have seen a shift to essentially the crisis of housing. So Champaign County, as I have said, Champaign County residents are the most rent burdened in the entire state of Illinois. So roughly a third of residents are severely rent burdened. And even though our township has had no program to help with rent, we receive a very large number of calls for rental assistance. Mostly these are residents who are working for low wages, almost just so folks know, almost everyone in this town is either working or disabled. I have yet to, it's just a handful of people I have met since May who are not working or disabled. So oftentimes these are folks who are working, and the thing that really makes the difference is in their ability to be housing secure is a medical or family emergency. So I don't have stats, but I do gather this. I would say it's roughly folks who make these phone calls, 90% of the calls or so really come from medical or family emergencies, and then all of a sudden they have a gap. So they typically can pay, but they have this gap. I will also say I get a lot of referrals. Get some referrals from the school system, and many of the calls we get are families that have children at home, which is particularly concerning. So I want to just do the 1-minute version of what an eviction looks like, because I think people don't necessarily know, and it's really important to this program to understand how it works. So typically someone gets behind in rent. 1 to 2 months is typical. They receive a 5-day notice, which they could actually receive as soon as they're behind in rent. But usually, it's towards the end of the month. They must pay the entire amount in full within those 5 days, or they be taken to court for eviction. Once they're taken to court, they rack up another $900 or plus or minus a few pennies in court or lawyer fees. So essentially at that point, once it goes to court, resolution is nearly impossible, because we're talking about folks who are maybe $500, $600, $800 behind in rent. We're not talking $2,000, $3,000. If they're that far behind, it's most likely not a sustainable situation to get them back. So once they're evicted, this shows up on their credit history, and it acts as a barrier for them to access shelter in the future. So then you have this situation where this family, they're working, they got the 5-day notice, there's no way they can get money in 5 days, they get the court order, now they owe $1,800, they're evicted on the street, there's no shelter in town for them. The emergency shelter for families is 1 to 3 months waiting period, and they cannot, even with money in their hand, get into housing because they have this mark against them. So I just want to give you a picture of what this looks like, because it's really important to understand the specific role that this program I'm proposing plays. So this 5-day notice period is the important period. If we can get in and stop the eviction before court fee is essentially, from a public expense perspective as well as a hardship for families perspective, that's the golden time. So the primary way townships throughout Illinois have responded to the problem of housing, which is not only ours, is through an emergency assistance program, which actually addresses utilities, medical, and other needs. So townships such as Bloomington, just down the street, Schaumburg, Evanston, Elgin, DeKalb, et cetera, there's several, Rockford, these are all places that have emergency assistance programs. The Township Officials of Illinois, of which we are members, publishes and maintains this, which is an emergency assistance manual. It's nice and small. We like small and short, which local townships can then customize to meet their local needs. So this is not set in stone, but it's a good starting point. It's also built into visual GAR software, so it's very easy to maintain. So our office is essentially working on launching a similar program. We've budgeted, with town board approval, $50,000 in this fiscal year for the program. The most important aspect of the program, the part that kind of differs from community to community, is the criteria for participation. So on the second page, you'll see a list of proposed criteria. And these are the criteria I'd like you all to chew on. Feel free to reach out to folks who work with vulnerable populations. I'd love to get your input on the criteria. I've gotten the input from a number of social service agencies. I'm continuing to do that. I'm really trying to work with folks who have done cash assistance. There's a number of folks in the faith-based community who have done it and stopped, or are continuing to do it but have limitations. So I'm trying to get their input since they have expertise. So essentially, the criteria that I'm proposing is income is at or below 100% of poverty. So really, you can't make for an individual more than $1,000 gross per month. Just as a comparison, LIHEAP goes up to 150%, and I've considered some range within that 100 to 150%. Second is your assets minus one car, which is typical, that's also in the rules, must be below the amount requested from the township. So essentially, if you have the money on hand minus your car to get to work, you should use that first, not use this program. A resident can only access emergency assistance once in a 2-year period. Now, this could be as low as once in a 12-month period, but because we don't have a lot of funds, I'd really like to see if we can serve as many people as possible. So this is the highest we've seen. Is the longest period is 24 months. Households must apply together, so you can't have 2 people from the same household applying. And then you have to exhaust other assistance options. So if it's utilities, LIHEAP or PIP, family and friends for rent, et cetera. And because we have a relationship-based approach to our work, I would say we not only verify everything that clients are saying, but they're also honest with us. I mean, we've just really haven't had a lot of problems with folks. Everything that people say, we are able to check out and verify. And that's because we look people in the eye and we say, no matter what, you live in Urbana, you have a need, no matter what, we're going to help you. So all you have to do is tell us. We'll keep all your information confidential, and we will figure this out together. We have a number of tools. And because of that approach, we really don't have cat and mouse games. Like, folks are very straightforward. Now, this is some places simply, if you have a disconnection notice, you can get the utility assistance. Based on numbers that I'm getting from RPC for the LIHEAP program, I am concerned we would be completely overwhelmed with requests for utility assistance. That would essentially be for months when LIHEAP is not open. And so as a result, I'd like to add the additional criteria that you have some vulnerability. So we've had a number of folks come to us where Ameren has turned off their power. One was their child needed their power to dispense a medication. Ameren turned it off anyway. One person needed their power to pump their IV. Ameren turned off their power. Yes, I did speak to the Ameren supervisor. They did not turn the power back on. We had to find other means. So it's definitely the case we have vulnerable folks. Additionally, for children to live at home without power, trying to get to school. So we've included folks with children under 16. So essentially that child has no work option to make money to pay the power bill. And so we would just focus on vulnerable populations for utility assistance. For rent assistance, we would need to see a 5-day notice. and to verify that they're on the lease paying rent to a landowner who's not a family member. So essentially, looking at those 5-day notice situations. For transportation assistance, we would like to provide a bus pass for any residents who is determined to have a life-threatening situation due to lack of transportation. So we currently give bus passes to all of our GA participants. I also have a rule that anyone who presents as homeless receives a bus pass because they can't get to shelter. They can't get to where they need to go. But this would expand that to include folks who maybe were unable to secure employment due to lack of transportation. And then the last two are assistance must solve the problem. So for example, say you have a 5-day notice, you have no income to sustain rent, you couldn't qualify for payment towards rent, but perhaps you could qualify for a week in a hotel room, a motel room, while centralized intake is working on transitional housing to keep the person off the street. Or if you're behind in utilities, $1,600, maybe we could provide our portion, $800, but we would make sure that they had a payment plan set up with Ameren and confirmed, and that we would check that their income could sustain that payment plan. If they couldn't do that, we wouldn't kind of dig them in deeper. At this point, I'm thinking the amount of assistance be limited to $800. But I'm also open to thoughts about that. We just have $50,000 for the year, which I think will, that's about 10 people a month, a little less than 10 folks a month for the remaining time frame. So I'm cognizant of the time and also that there's members of the public here to speak, but I do want to give you all opportunity to give input on these pieces, and then I also welcome input via email, phone call, whatever.
Any thoughts right now?
Yeah.
Dennis?
Well, Danielle, I'm very impressed by your overview of this assistance program. I know that these issues come up a lot and are of great concern to families, and in the last 5 days, I've actually talked to 2 different people who would qualify because of the situation that they're in for some kind of assistance, and I do direct them to your office.
Good.
But the fact that I can do that with assurance that some help will be assisted to them and that they actually will be heard, it makes me feel really confident in making that recommendation.
Thank you.
Bill?
Yeah, I may want to add to this by email since we just got a look at this, but I think it looks really well researched, it's reasonable and financially responsible. I was just curious in your discussions or research into the Ameren situation, I think they have like something called Dollar Plus. You can donate $1 on your bill to help supposedly pay bills for people that can't make their bills. Do you know where that goes, or is it worth giving to that?
I am setting up an angel fund at the township, which actually a lot of townships have. I can guarantee that 100% of that angel fund will go to, on the behalf of clients. There won't be a single penny that comes out for administration. I would recommend that, or donations to Empty Tomb or Faith United Methodist Church. Those are churches that give direct cash assistance at times, or are able to facilitate that assistance. And so I can't necessarily recommend that you give your money to Ameren. I think you give plenty of your money to Ameren.
That's good. You do know where the other goes. So that helps a lot. Thanks.
Eric? Or Mary Alice and then Eric. Sorry.
Danielle, thank you. This is very nice. I think you did a really nice job on this. I'm curious if you know or have any feel for what is the average or the median amount of money that people owe that will help them get out of this hole?
Well, so what I've been doing since folks have started calling us, which was my first day, is to actually gather, because we do help every single person who is an Urbana resident who comes in with a need, even if we haven't had emergency assistance. So we actually we have them have a whole survey. And so typically the amounts that people are coming in, there's kind of 3 categories. There's folks who come in with, and I'm not kidding, I need 38 cents to get a prescription. That was one person. Also things like, I'm a veteran, I pay $75 a month for rent, and I'm behind on rent because I have absolutely no income. Those are like really easy because they're very small amounts, and we do get that. And it's interesting that there's not, I mean, other than panhandling, there's actually not a lot of ways to get cash in those moments. Then there's folks, and I would say this is the vast majority, where they have like very doable bills. So I would say it's somewhere in the order of they need $300 to $1,000, or say even, I would say $300 to $1,500 in terms of like outstanding bills, but people almost always have some of that themselves, or they're able to scrounge, you know, through their various social networks and resources for some hundreds of dollars. So I think the vast majority of folks are really going to fit. There are people who come in the front door who are so, I mean, they have, you know, there is, I would like to understand, and I'd like to actually put an entire intern on why people are paying so much in utility bills for one-bedroom apartments. Like, I have a 6-bedroom house, and my utility bills are less than many of the people who are coming in the front door. And I'm just trying to understand what is going on here. Do we need to look at a program that helps to insulate the homes? Like what, because they also know that their utility bills are high, so they don't seem to be overusers of AC. I mean, they're careful. So I think there are some folks who get so far behind that we have to kind of do a reset, and oftentimes we see that unfortunately, they have to go through a transitional, you know, they have to go through homelessness, or they do go through homelessness, and then a transitional shelter situation. And, you know, and oftentimes folks in those situations may also be disabled, and really trying to route them through the SSI and SSDI process. Mm-hmm. So we kind of look at those pieces. But those are really outliers. I think I'm trying to pick a number, that's why I picked 800. I think the sweet spot is somewhere in that $800 to $1,000 level. I will say my predecessor had a rental assistance program where the limit that you could get was $500, but you also needed to not owe more than $500 total. And as a result, almost no one qualified, because find me a $500 rental in this town. I mean, I just did for someone the other day, yesterday, a woman who was homeless. We found her an apartment. She and I worked together for 3 hours, and we found her apartment for $475. And I said, you hit the jackpot today. This is not happen very often. So I would say generally folks are, you know, a month's rent for a single person is going to be between $600 and $800, and for a family is going to be upwards to $1,000. So that gives you a sense of like about if someone is behind in rent 1 month, they're going to be looking for that. Now, if you have court fees, then it gets really hairy. So I know no one ever promotes. So many groups that have programs are afraid to promote their programs because they're afraid of the deluge that's going to happen. But I would like an MTD bus ad that says, do not wait past your 5-day notice, come talk to us. If you get a 5-day notice, day 2 you should be in the township office, because we can actually help people at that point, and it just becomes very difficult once they get the court costs. Sorry, attorneys, you're gonna have, you know, we're gonna cut down on your clientele here, hopefully, but we'd like to, you know, keep people out of court.
Okay, thank you.
Eric?
So I've only recently, in a different context, become aware of how hard court costs, not the lawyer's fees, but the court fees, hit disproportionately low-income people. And I guess I'm starting to hope, very preliminary conversations, that maybe a movement might be made to reform the state statutes that have flat court fees, to actually tie those fees to people's means. So I have started a couple of conversations, and I'll put you in the loop on those.
Yeah, I'd happy to work with you. One reformation immediately is if a tenant files on their own behalf a counter charge against their landlord, they pay more in court fees than the landlord pays to file against the tenant.
Right.
That makes no sense to me.
Well,
why would the tenant actually be paying more than the landlord for court fees?
Because it's the landlords who wrote the statute.
And the issue is the attorney's fees are around $500 of that 900. So there's a piece of that too, but I do think if we look at the court fees, which tend to be $200-300 in that range, the attorneys is $5 to $6, then, you know, that's at least a portion of it.
Dennis?
Concerning the evaluation of what might be overcharged utility bills, do you work with the state organization CUB, Citizens Utility Board? They send out a newsletter, I get it every once a month, and they have many, many cases where they have volunteers who come to evaluate the
Really?
utility bills of people, and they often find that they're being overcharged $400 a month in some instances, or $270 or something like that. So if they have an office here in the area, in the county or region, or even if they don't, I think it would be really important to contact that organization, because they fight very strongly for the rights
Super.
of utility customers.
I do know about them. I had no idea they evaluated bills.
They
And I
do.
will definitely make a phone call to them because
Yeah.
I really would like some support in looking at that piece.
I think that would be a great resource for you.
Great.
Okay, so people email other suggestions and ideas to Danielle during the month of December, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Please do. And then the next town board meeting, I'll announce the actual go-live date so that you can get the word out to folks. But again, if people live in Urbana and they have a need, even before this program exists, have them come to our office. That's what we tell people. That's what we're here for.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Seeing no further business before the town board, the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.